One Piece 1054 has dropped and the evil Shanks theories are flying. And as someone who's always been strongly against that theory, I set out on a mission in this video not only to disprove it, but also to figure out what Shanks' real goals are and why he is going to fight Luffy and go after the One Piece. But before we get to that, I just need you to do me one favor, which is to hit that subscribe button and join our King Pirates crew, because it really helps the channel and I would really appreciate it. With that said though, the first thing I want to start off with is looking at Shanks' actions throughout the story to really identify his core beliefs and figure out what type of person he is. And the first thing I want to look at specifically is his treatment of other people, which I think is really important to highlight, because whenever I hear evil Shanks theories, they kind of always just completely ignore the consistent personality Shanks has always had, which is that he's a good guy. From the time he was a kid on the Roger Pirates to the current grown-ass man he is as a Yonko, time and time again he's always shown that he's a good dude. As an apprentice on the Roger Pirates, he fit right in, always having a good time, celebrating, and just having fun with the crew. He established great relationships with everyone, including newer members like Odin. So much so when Odin went to Wano, Shanks even said, "Hey, if you need help, I'm your friend, I'm willing to help." And even with someone like Buggy, who Shanks consistently fought with, he still saved his life when it was in danger. So as a kid and a teenager, even though he was a pirate, Shanks was clearly a good pirate. And this personality stays consistent even as he becomes the captain of his own crew. Not only with him having strong relationships with his own crew, but also maintaining some of the same relationships with the Roger Pirates. As we saw during a flashback, he still keeps in touch with Rayleigh and is on good terms. Even when he reunited with Buggy at Marineford, he treated him like an old friend. And even with someone like Mihawk, who is not his crew member, who he had legendary duels with, they're just drinking buddies now. And furthermore, we see Shanks' treatment of other people extend to ordinary citizens as well, because despite being a pirate, he stayed at Fuchsia Village for an entire year and he was completely accepted by the citizens. Of course, he got very close with Makino, but even someone like the mayor of the town, who was strongly against Luffy becoming a pirate, acknowledged that Shanks was a good pirate. So consistently throughout the story, Shanks has always been someone that cares for other people, treats people with respect, and very clearly a good guy. But of course, that doesn't mean he isn't a pirate. He is still willing to fight and even kill people. But even in regards to that, the only times we've seen him do that was to help protect his friends and save other people. So besides his core principle of not letting other people hurt his friends, which once again is a good thing, personality-wise, he hasn't really shown even an inkling of someone that is evil or even a bad person. So beyond that, the only other things we could look at are his motivations and nature. And the first thing we have to address here is the idea that Shanks is a pacifist, which I think is one of the most overblown things in the community, because never once in the story has it really been stated by Shanks that he's a pacifist. In fact, the only things we have to suggest it are his actions of trying to prevent the Marineford War, which honestly you could also just easily explain as personal motivations of not wanting Luffy, Whitebeard, or Ace to get hurt. But besides that, the other thing people will point to is Shanks' relationship with the Gorosei and them saying that he has no motivations for conquest, which is why they're happy to just let him be. But even with that, that's still just the Gorosei's perspective on Shanks, and they've been very incompetent recently. Yet somehow this idea has been overblown into Shanks is so much of a pacifist that he's trying to keep the balance of the world. And that idea is just kind of headcanon. There's nothing really supporting it, but I feel like it's been mentioned so much that people have kind of started to accept it as a fact, when in reality there's been no definite support that Shanks is that extreme of a pacifist. Now of course, at the same time, I will acknowledge that Shanks is very diplomatic and non-confrontational, but I also think that kind of goes back to his personality of caring for others and respecting other people. He's not just gonna fight people for no reason, and some fights are not even worth it, like the Mountain Bandits. But in the end, if something really matters to him, like someone hurting his friends or his friends being in danger, he will take action and kill people or try to stop a war. So overall, the idea that Shanks is somehow evil because he's just trying to keep the balance in the world, I think that's completely overblown, which gets us to the most recent argument of Shanks being evil of what we saw in the last chapter, which is that Shanks is actually finally making his move and going after the One Piece. So does that mean he's been using Luffy this whole time or sees Luffy as a threat? I still don't think so, and in the last section of this video, I'm going to be explaining what I think Shanks' entire plan has been. But first, I want to talk a little bit about Shanks and Luffy's relationship, because once again, I think the idea of Shanks being evil and using Luffy this whole time, or thinks that Luffy is too dangerous and needs to be eliminated, that's just inconsistent. And we don't really even have to spend a ton of time on this. All we really have to look at is chapter 1. Everything is right there. Right off the bat at the beginning of One Piece, Shanks and Luffy have a great relationship. Luffy looks up to him. Of course, eventually Shanks ends up saving Luffy and even sacrifices an arm for him, which he later ends up saying to Whitebeard that it was an act of him giving it for the sake of a new era. Following that, he ends up making the promise with Luffy, giving him the straw hat, which he can return when he becomes a great pirate. And honestly, just just from that interaction in chapter 1 alone, it's very clear that Shanks believes in Luffy and believes that he's gonna be a great pirate. Because not only did he give him Roger's hat and sacrificed an arm for him, he also told Ben Beckman that Luffy acted like he did when he was younger. So he's not just doing all of this because he likes Luffy, he genuinely believes in Luffy's ability to accomplish his dream. This is proven even more when we saw his interaction with Rayleigh, where he compares Luffy to Roger, the captain he respected so much. Time and time again, he continued to celebrate Luffy's success as his bounties grew, and even when Luffy defeated Big Mom and became the 5th Yonko, Shanks was happy about it. He smiled and was excited to reunite with Luffy. So there has not been a single hint in the story that Shanks is worried about Luffy being too dangerous and needing to eliminate him. So I just don't understand how all of a sudden people believe that Shanks is just gonna be like, whoa, Luffy, hold on. You're moving a little too quick. You gotta slow down. I gotta take you out. It just doesn't make any sense from everything we've seen from Shanks. Even in the recent chapter, he's smiling thinking about the times he spent with Luffy. So the idea that Shanks is all of a sudden gonna become a villain to try to eliminate Luffy, I'm rejecting that. Because on top of his relationship with Luffy, it also just goes against his personality. As we discussed earlier, Shanks is pretty chill and non-confrontational, and the only time he takes action is when his friends are in danger, which Luffy is not doing, and Luffy's also his friend. So I'm fully confident Shanks is still friends with Luffy and he has no intentions of harming him. But of course, that doesn't mean Shanks isn't gonna fight Luffy, because I fully expect that to happen. In fact, as we saw in the recent chapter, an indirect confrontation is already about to go down, and eventually I fully expect Shanks and the Red Hair Pirates to directly confront Luffy and the Straw Hats, but it's still gonna be as friends. And honestly, I don't think this should be surprising. This is something we've already known. From the moment Shanks and Luffy made their promise, it wasn't just to return to Straw Hat and become a great pirate. Shanks also literally said to Luffy, to accomplish your dream, you're gonna have to surpass us. So this entire time, Shanks believing in Luffy is also him believing that Luffy's gonna surpass him and bring forth the next era. And on the other hand, Luffy knows this as well. He said himself that he's taking down all 4 Yonko. So while Shanks and Luffy are definitely going to be fighting, it's all part of the plan. Luffy has to surpass Shanks. And while the fight is going to be a very high level fight with both of them not holding back, it's not gonna be like them trying to kill each other. Instead, once again, it's gonna be like fights we've already seen from Shanks in the story. Like when he and the Roger Pirates went all out against the Whitebeard Pirates and fought for 3 days and 3 nights, but then by the end of it, they were just having a drink. Or Shanks having many legendary duels with Mihawk where they definitely weren't holding back and now just being drinking buddies. Shanks fighting Luffy is gonna be the exact same scenario. He's showing him respect as an equal and he's helping him grow. And by the end of it, they're probably gonna be having a party. So with that said, I think we've pretty much disproved the idea of evil Shanks, but there is still the question of what is his plan and why is he going after the One Piece now? And well, to paint the full picture, I want to start with when Shanks was an apprentice on the Roger Pirates. Because back then, you could still very clearly see that Shanks was very ambitious. He wanted to explore the world and become his own captain. His massive potential was very obvious as well, given that Roger gave him his straw hat incredibly early on. And even when Shanks was unable to go to Laugh Tale, he said, no worries, I'll be back on my own. So overall, I think up until that point, Shanks had very clear ambitions of following in Roger's footsteps. But then there was still this one mysterious moment when Roger came back from Laugh Tale, told Shanks something, and Shanks burst out into tears. And personally, I think this is the moment where things really changed for Shanks, because Roger told him something to the extent of that you cannot be Joy Boy. Because on Laugh Tale, Roger and the Roger Pirates found out about everything. He knew that he was too early and that someone was coming in the future to surpass him. And one important thing we really need to focus on is this specific moment when Roger said this person is not born yet, which means that this person also could not be Shanks. And if Roger told that to Shanks with Shanks' ambitions of following in Roger's footsteps, he would be pretty heartbroken and probably burst into tears. But of course, he couldn't cry forever, so I think instead he just changed his plans. He continued to get strong, became his own captain, but he just couldn't be Joy Boy. As for what he did next is another theory that I believe in, which is that Shanks was trying to give the Gomu Gomu no Mi to Ace. I know Mr. Morge made a video on this recently, but this is something I mentioned a long time ago as well, because everything just adds up perfectly. Roger literally said himself that he wanted his son to be the next Joy Boy. Meanwhile, Whitebeard, one of the only people Roger talked to about the stuff he learned on Laugh Tale, also did his best to make Ace the next Joy Boy. So if Shanks also found out about the prophecy from Roger, there's no reason why he wouldn't try to help Ace become the next Joy Boy, which brings us to his actions of getting the Gomu Gomu no Mi and then immediately going to Fuchsia Village. I think based off of those actions, he probably knew the Gomu Gomu no Mi was special and he was looking for Ace to give it to. After all, he did end up spending an entire year at Fuchsia Village, and it wasn't until Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi that he decided, well, okay, it's time to go. Now, as for how Shanks knew about Ace, I think there's a variety of ways you could explain it. Maybe Roger told him, maybe he just found out on his own because Ace is also the name of Roger's sword. He could have somehow found out that Ace was in Fuchsia Village, or maybe he just went to the East Blue because that's where Roger is from in the first place. One way or another, I think he found out about Ace and wanted to help him and give him the Gomu Gomu no Mi, but instead, as fate would have it, Luffy ended up eating it. After that, of course, Shanks starts freaking out, but eventually he just has to accept it, which leads us to the situation with the bandits when Shanks and the crew are ready to leave, and I think this might be the first moment when Shanks really had some serious belief in Luffy, because before that incident happened, Shanks was just ready to get out of there and leave. But after that, I think he kind of changed his perspective because he saw a different side in Luffy, who put his life on the line to protect his friends and stand up for them, which is one of the things that Shanks believes in the most. So I think that is the first moment when Shanks really realizes the potential of Luffy, and he utilizes that moment to really teach him a lesson. Because one thing I think a lot of people overlook is the moment right before Shanks sacrifices his arm for Luffy. When you go back and reread that moment, it becomes very clear that Shanks did that purposely, because the mountain bandit literally was able to escape with a smoke bomb, and like with observation hockey, there's no way that's happening. And to make it even more obvious, you even have Ben Beckman off to the side kind of smirking, knowing that Shanks was gonna do something. So I think Shanks sacrificing his arm was very purposely done, because he could have easily taken out the mountain bandit or the Lord of the Coast, but instead he decides to use that moment to teach Luffy a lesson about the dangers of becoming a pirate, and in his words, giving up that arm for the sake of a new era. And it was after that moment that Luffy realized that he was not yet ready to become a pirate. He had to become much stronger. He couldn't just talk the talk, he had to walk the walk. And of course, after that moment, to motivate Luffy even more, Shanks gives him the straw hat, makes the promise, tells him to surpass him, and then following that, Shanks has just been kind of coasting. He continues to get stronger, became a Yonko, continued to celebrate Luffy's success. Overall, took a pretty hands-off approach to let Luffy grow, but when Luffy was actually in serious danger at Marineford, Shanks did end up saving his life. And possibly he might have been ready to do it again, as Luffy went up against 2 Yonko and Shanks was conveniently right at Wano as well. But luckily, Luffy ended up winning. He's a great pirate now, he's ready to reunite with Shanks. But as Shanks said himself, it's too early to reunite. Luffy has one final test, which is surpassing him and getting to the One Piece, becoming the Pirate King, and fulfilling the prophecy of Joy Boy. That's gonna do it for this video. If you made it this far, you probably had a good time, so please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. If you don't want to make it easy, I'm thinking of a number between 1 through 4. If you guess it wrong, you have to like, subscribe, and watch the next video. And the answer I'm thinking of is 4, my favorite number.